Hello everyone. If you don't already know, I teach a developmental statistics class at Tarleton as a grad student, and my lesson was over converting interval notation to plus and minus notation. And so my goal for this lesson was that the students will be able to understand and demonstrate how to use plus minus notation with intervals, which will provide a structure with confidence intervals when they are introduced. And the goal will also be measured through written communication. One thing that helps me make my goals, and something that I have lived by since going to grad school and being introduced to this book, is called Principles to Action. And it's by NCTM, which is a math organization for teachers. And they have a section, and if you ever get the chance to get this book and you're a math teacher, I highly recommend it. It will help you engage your students and how to get your students to be able to understand mathematics and help them be engaged. And so I highly recommend this book if you don't already have it. And on page 12, it has a section for establishing mathematics goals to focus learning, and it says the goal that guides instruction should not be just a reiteration of a standard statement, but should be more specifically linked to the current classroom curriculum and student learning needs. I think this is so important because when I was a student teacher, I actually just, took the TEKS, and that was my learning goal. I just said the student will do this. Right? And so I feel like that was just what the state was saying. It was just your standards, right? You didn't link it to your classroom. And so that's something that I have morphed into as a grad student here, because in my undergrad, that's how it was. And now I'm able to actually connect it with my students and make it more for my students rather than just for me. And so that has been a big help when it comes to writing my goal and making it specific for my students. And then my essential questions. My first one was, how can we use visual representations to show our thought process? This is very important for our students to see it visually. Does it make sense when I draw it out? How can I draw it out? What do I do? What are the steps I take? And that kind of thing. So that was my first essential question. My next one would be, can you explain to me the steps you would take to rewrite the interval from A to B in plus and minus notation? So explaining, getting that understanding, that deeper level of mathematics and putting it into your own words is so important for our students, because chances are they can do it all day on paper, but if you ask them to explain it and know the meaning, it's, you're probably going to have 50-50 a little bit. How might you justify that your plus and minus notation tells you the same interval given? This is something that I think is so neat that we can introduce to our students, how they can check their own work, because most of the time our students are like, teacher, did I do this right? I don't know if I did this right or not. They're second guessing themselves, and this is a way that they can understand if they understand what they're doing, then they can check their own work and make sure that it makes sense in their head, and if it makes sense in their head, then they're good to go. So that's something that I think is very important in allowing our students to understand, how can we tell if the answer is correct? How can we tell if we did it correctly? Did we do our process correctly? Did we draw our picture correctly? And that kind of thing. And so my desired understandings for this lesson was that the students will be able to use their prior knowledge about intervals to find the half width and midpoint. So we actually already had a lesson over this, and so they should have an idea of how to find the half width and midpoint. And then the students will be able to compare and decipher the similarities and differences between interval notation and plus and minus notation. What does the interval notation give us? What does the plus and minus interval notation give us? As a result of understanding intervals and plus and minus notation, the students will be able to perform confidence intervals and statistics. So this is to help them prepare for their following class. And then the students will be able to explain in words the process that they would take in order to convert interval notation into plus and minus notation. And I saw this in the text of Understanding by Design, and it says that students in general can do low-level tasks, but are universally weak in higher-order work that requires transfer. And so I used that to help. Oh my gosh, I just stapled my book. Whoops. I have an electric stapler. Anyway, so I use that to help with the higher order thinking. I gave them a quiz, and it said to explain in words how you would rewrite the following interval using plus and minus notation and determine how you can check your work. And so they would get this paper, and they could work it out if they wanted to. They didn't necessarily have to work it out, but they had to explain to me, like say I didn't know how to do it, they would have to explain to me how to do it. And so this really brings in the idea of using mathematical vocabulary, and I notice a lot of them can do it just do it, no problem. But then once they were explaining it, they were getting terms backwards. And so that gives me a good indication of what they know and what they don't know. Rather than if I was just looking up here, it would seem to me that they knew it. No problem. But then when they were explaining it, they were getting the vocabulary terms mixed up, and it was no longer valid. And so that is how I would measure my goal. And so I hope you enjoyed my lesson. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, if you want to know anything that I did during my lesson, feel free to comment, leave a comment. We could talk about it. And I hope you'll have a good day. Bye.